So the key trends were, now that we're living in a post-COVID world, a lot of trials are resuming normal activity. So they're focusing on other indications and therapy areas other than infectious disease or COVID. A lot of the trials that are being resumed are primarily oncology focused, and a lot of the drugs that are being investigated are predominantly for pain. Clinical trials are probably being impacted the most in the US and China. So currently APAC is one of the leading regions for trials. So if the tariffs do hit China, that would probably impact them the most. In terms of the US, it might impact the clinical trial supplies. That's being conducted within trials, and it may be limited. We may see trial costs go up, but those are probably the most immediate factors that I can think of at the moment.
I advocate very strongly data first and AI later, because there is a number of promises that AI is going to do miracles. But the simple fact is that it needs to be structured high quality data, otherwise it would not work. And especially in the clinical trials environment, that kind of high quality is even more important than it would have been in a preclinical, more exploratory research.
So at the moment, synthetic data in itself is not being used in clinical trials, but there is promise for that. So my session was more about, this is a promising area. Let's see if there are some interesting use cases where it may be appropriate to use these data to enhance clinical trials. Now, one of the areas that we've looked at is if you have a small clinical trial sample. Now, ideally, you will have planned for this before you started your clinical study. But sometimes you've done your clinical study, and despite your best efforts, your sample size is too small. And if in that situation, you need a rescue component where it's absolutely not feasible to go and collect more data, synthetic data could be an option.
There's a number of ways. One of the best, though, is in severe indications with inadequate standard of care. A synthetic control arm can provide an opportunity to reduce the number of prospective patients that need to be assigned to that standard of care. So for example, in a disease like recurrent glioblastoma, where the standard of care has not changed for many, many years, we can use historical data where patients have received standard of care and give more prospective patients the investigational therapy. Hybrid synthetic control arms, I think, are really sort of the best of both worlds. It's a randomized trial where we've intentionally reduced the number of patients being prospectively assigned to the standard of care and supplementing with historical data instead.
I would say the first big trend is about the big progress that the artificial intelligence is bringing us and the advanced data analysis that we are seeing related with this. The second would be the move to remote hybrid decentralized clinical trials. And this is at least partially possible because we have now better tools, wearable devices, and apps that patients can use, and we can then remotely monitor them. And the third trend will be related with the real-time data integration and what this can bring to us, to the clinical trial.
My main takeaway is actually the patient centricity. I think sometimes we are so focused on our work that we tend to forget how important it is and why we are actually doing that. Regardless if you are working for a large company or a small company, or if you are just a small part of this machine, at the end of the day, there is a patient that is waiting for the medication. So whatever we do, we need to do 100% of what is in our power to make sure that the patients can actually benefit from innovative medicines.
My key takeaway message so far would be that while patient centricity is on everyone's printed materials and posters, that we still have a long way to go to make that authentic and real.
We are always saying that we are working for patients, and I think we need to have this cultural change and start to stop to work about patient centricity and start to work with patients in a real way.
I was happy to hear from the site perspective what is expected from the sponsor, from the CRO, even from the CRAs at the sites. That was very good to hear, specifically from the site side. Another part, it was very interesting to listen those external factors, how it's impacting pharmas, also the CROs in our daily activities.
The session that was for small biotech companies and how they struggle in selecting CRO, and they are a single compound company and they do not have in-house expertise. Supporting them is a key for future growth, because big pharma usually invest in small companies and they have to be successful for big pharma to succeed.